Welcome, welcome everyone, and thank you for still being here. This is our second lesson of EoF School. I really wish to thank you from the deepest of my heart for joining us today. So we have reached the second appointment of our school. The title of today's lesson is Peace, Fides, and the Economy. So we thought about it for a long time before proposing this title to His Eminency, the Patriarch of Jerusalem, who is with us today and whom I greet with great affection. So we thought about it a lot because on the one hand, we didn't want to make this lesson obvious or general or too general to be understood. And on the other hand, we didn't even want to remain too abstract, to do something so general and so abstract that is not related to human being and humanity all over the world. But I don't want to take too much time from you. I'm sure that there is nothing abstract in faith, in trust, and in peace. And there is nothing abstract in these words. And His Eminence today will provide us with some great thoughts and will prove it to us. So my role today is just to speak as little as possible. So I'm going to be silent in 1 minute. Not before reminding you that you can fill your attendance form by scanning this QR code or by inserting this code below. Just for you to know, also today we are going to use Mentimeter. So please take your phone or go on another window in your browser and then go on www.menti.com and then use this code 50877946. So go on www.menti.com and then use the code 507877946. So fantastic. Thank you for liking me. Fantastic. So also keep Mentimeter always open by going to menti.com and entering this code. Why? Well, because you will be allowed to ask some questions through Mentimeter and put any comment you want to put. But before leaving the floor to the Bishop of Assisi and the President of EoF, Bishop Domenico Sorrentino, whom I sincerely thank for being here and who will introduce today's lesson, I would like to virtually leave the floor to all of you connected here through Zoom and connected through YouTube by asking you to tell us what is the first word that comes to your mind when you think of peace. So go on www.menti.com and then use the code 508777946. Fantastic. So the first word that comes to your mind when you think of peace are friendship, love, fraternity, joy, justice. Thank you for voting. Wow, amazing. Dialogue, Papa Francesco, Pope Francis, non-violence, love, acceptance, respect, solidarity, justice, God, joy, and fraternity. Fraternity gives consensus. It seems that many of you are thinking about love and respect, friendship also. Fantastic. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for voting. And now another important word that will be central in today's lesson is fides. What is the first word that comes to your mind when you think of fides? So I know that this is a Latin word, but I also know that you received some hints on this. Well, Latin, openness, trust, hope, faith, love, Pope Francis once more, no war, no barriers, and strength, love, esperanza, Christ, possible, ratio, Christ, faithfulness. So thank you so much, because it's really important from our side to know what you think about those two words before starting our lesson. Those two words, will be central in today's lesson, and will be central in general all through this EoF school. So while you are still voting, I would like to thank Bishop Domenico Sorrentino, the Bishop of Assisi, and the President of EoF to be with us today. So, Bishop, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Valentina. Thank you, Valentina. Always beautiful. And welcome to everybody. Thanks for this opportunity that you gave me to introduce Father Pizzaballa, and also the issue we are facing today. Welcome, Monsignor Giambattista. You all know that the Franciscans have a particular task in the Holy Land. When you go to Jerusalem and all the Holy Land, you'll find everywhere Franciscans. From Assisi, they go there to be at service of the land of Jesus for us all. So thank you for this service, Padre Pizzaballa, in the name of all Franciscans of the world. You were there many years, the custos of the Holy Land, and now you are there. You are there as patriarch, Latin patriarch, because I must explain perhaps to somebody that in the Holy Land, of course, there are all the Christian confessions, and we as Catholics are also there. And Padre Pizzaballa represents us in the Latin Patriarchate, and he can deal with the theme of today with a particular experience from that region of the world that is a particular region of interest for Christians, for Muslims, and of course for the Hebrews. So it's a laboratory of dialogue, and also, unfortunately, also a great problem to face, to solve. Thank you for the presence among us and for the lecture you will give us. Now, reflecting on the theme of our today's school, I must confess that after a moment when I felt so happy, because the title appeared to me not only beautiful, but also evident. When I tried to go ahead in a deeper reflection, I found so many concrete questions that I was happy to be charged only of introducing the lecturer and not to be the lecturer. So I'm very curious to listen to Monsignor Pizzaballa, and of course to listen to your questions and reflections. The problem come to me from the different situations of the world and of the history, and from the different meanings and proportions of these three words when we put them, or we try to put them together. It's not so simple. Let us make some examples of different situations to understand how serious this issue is. Let us consider first an ideal situation when the three words faith, peace, and economy are in a condition of equilibrium. For instance, where I and you share the same faith, in the sense of the common religious faith, at least if you are also true believers, and also when we are in a condition of peace, because there are no reasons to be in contrast with the others. In this case, there would be also the possibility of having a good economy, in the sense that we can produce peacefully, we can trade in peace, we can grow together, and your growth makes me happy, my growth makes you happy. But there are other conditions, other situations. The situations of different religious faiths. Nowadays, we are trying to understand that we can have different faiths, and this is not a problem for the peace and for the economy. If we have a good idea of God as God of peace, so that we can respect one another and live in peace. The understanding of the Christian faith is today very clear, and what Pope Francis, in footsteps of Jesus and Francis of Assisi, wrote in Fratelli Tutti, signed here in Assisi, and witnessed the last week in Iraq, is very clear. But we know that this understanding of the faith in the history was not always of this way. The problem is, what kind of faith can help peace and also a good economy? There are people who have a faith that is a problem for peace and also for the economy. I think, for instance, of the terrorists, of the integralists. On the other side, there are people who believe that to assure a peaceful society, it should be better not to have a religious faith at all. Of course, you can imagine my response. Both the integralists and the relativists, so to say, are not right. But you can see also the complexity of the problem. Let us hear Monsignor Pizzaballa to respond in a good way, of course, and we know that he would respond in a good way. Third situation, we have regions of the world where there are important natural resources, which are so important for the economy. Let us look at the Africa. We know that if the mines of cobalto in Congo stop their work, we cannot have anymore our cellular telephones. What should we do to have a good economy, respecting the rights of people who, despite their natural richness or because of their natural richness, are colonized? What should be the relationship of these three words, fides, faith, peace, and economy in this case? So, only three examples to get in the complexity of the problem. The first thing that we need to do is to understand the meaning of each of these words. In the scholastic tradition, people used to say explicatio terminorum, explication of the words. It's so important to make a dialogue, to understand what the words mean. What is really faith? Under this word, there are different meanings: convictions, dogmas of faith, attitudes towards God, and also towards our neighbors. The term fides is important in economy and economics, also as human fides that can assure confidence, accountability, possibility to produce together and to trade having trust in one another. In a Middle Age, Eugenio knows well and writes that one made trade with bona fide. It's accountability, openness. We can trust one another. Second, what is really peace? If we colonize a region of the world and make a peace with the force of weapons, is that really a peace? And the flourishing of the trade and of the economy in those situations can be said a good economy? And third, what is economy? It's our job in our School of Economy of Francesco to give an answer to this question with the help that is provided to us from the social doctrine of the Church, from the evangelical example of Francis of Assisi, and from the teaching of Pope Francis. It's not so obvious. We must accept this challenge. We are in a world where there are many conflicts. The Holy Land area is one of them. We can hear today from the lecture of Monsignor Pizzaballa, how can we address this topic from this particular perspective? In Europe, we have now a different scenario. We know from the history that also in the centuries when we shared the same Christian faith, we experienced many wars. Now, with construction of Europe's common market and the growing of political union of Europe, we are experiencing a period of peace. A question rises: can the economical interest help to build peace and not only to bring war? I'm sorry I have put more questions than answers. I'm confident that it's not impossible to find the right answers. And our process of Economy of Francesco has this task. Thank you, Monsignor Pizzaballa, to bring today a brick to the construction of the building of a good, faith friend and peace friend economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Bishop Sorrentino. Thank you so much. You were super kind in introducing Archbishop and the Patriarch of Jerusalem, Pierbattista Pizzaballa, which I want really to thank from the deepest of my heart. And now, friends, I remember you that you can sign your presence by going on the Google Drive document, and also that there is a translation available in Portuguese here in Zoom. You can click on translation and select Portuguese, and this translation is provided by Alvaro, who's going this voluntarily without any obligation. So thank you, Alvaro, for this. Now, just a quick reminder, you can use Mentimeter to ask any question you want to both bishops. And so now is your time, the Patriarch of Jerusalem, Pierbattista Pizzaballa. Thank you for being here. I leave the floor to you.
Thank you. I understand you give me 30 minutes, right? So in 30 minutes, I will solve all the problems of peace, faith, and economy, of course. I'm joking. First of all, I send you the text. I don't think you sent the text to all. I don't know if you sent or not, but the text I have is too long, so I will cut here and there. I must confess that usually I don't read. I prefer to talk, but since we in English, my English is not my mother language, mother tongue, so I prefer to read. I'm afraid it will become a little boring, but anyway, we will be patient. First of all, I have to confess that I'm not an expert in economics. The economic dynamics of the world and the region are known to me as any other citizen trying to inquire, but nothing more. Having invited me to speak in this context, I assume and I take for granted that the perspective from which I will have to try to analyze the topic of peace, faith, and economy is that of those who live in the Middle East. I try to see from this perspective, try to be general, as general speak, but also to be practical, as you asked. So do not expect from me, therefore, general analysis of social and economic problems in general. Moreover, it must be said that the situation and fate of the Middle East region are also decisive anyway for a large part of the world and beyond. On the other hand, they are similar to many other economically depressed regions. The Levant region, on one hand, is one of the richest in the world of energy resources, of which the world is increasingly hungry and therefore economically attractive. On the other hand, it is paradoxically among the most conflictual and socially depressed regions globally. Iraq, Syria, Yemen, and so on are very depressed. And also Jordan, many other countries are economically very poor. Allow me, after briefly outlining the phenomenon of current globalization, to reverse the element indicated and thus develop my presentation in 3 points: faith and integral human development, universal peace and fraternity, new economy and new men. For the translator, now I go to the first point, globalization, new challenge. Sorry. We are facing new dramatic challenges globally and demonstrated, for example, by the COVID-19 pandemic, which are still facing and whose consequences we do not yet know, not only at the health level, but also psychological, social, political, economical, and so on. The resulting fear marks directly or indirectly the life of our time and seems to have paralyzed us. 2020 was a year characterized by fear at all levels. Everything seems to have been overturned by this infinitesimal but powerful virus that collapsed our Tower of Babel, also economic, which has in short time eliminated our project and left us disoriented. As a result of the pandemic, the economy of various nations has undergone a worrying collapse. The unemployed have increased, many industries and small businesses have had to close, the rank of the new poor have increased at the gates of churches and charities, and so on. The future of so many government, the economy, and the labor are uncertain, in some cases worrying. A second example of a globalized crisis is the phenomenon of demonstrations, sometimes violent demonstrations, in various nations of the world, which, although they have specific motivations at local level, have various common foundations, such as, for example, social injustice in the arena of labor, the enormous differences of society between a wealthy elite that has an economy in their hands and many poor people, new form of poverty, the serious pollution due to land use, the use of war and violence for easier access to energy resources, political violence, and so on. In short, the economic theories on which international policies have been based in recent decades, often coordinated by international bodies, have not brought a fairer and more supportive world, have not erased poverty, but rather the opposite, and are now more than ever showing their failure. But these are topics that you know better than I. A third example is the new technologies, which, while they represent a magnificent opportunity for progress for humanity, are not accessible to everyone, and at the same time raise countless ethical questions. I briefly provided only 3 examples of challenges of so-called globalization, but I think each one could add so many others. I think you know better than I what the serious political, social, and economical distortions are in the world. It is not secret that religious institutions, and not religions, religious institutions have often played a negative role in this context. Sometimes they have been exploited as an element of status quo, that is, of preserving the existing state of things. Sometimes, as in the Middle East, but not only, they have been used to justify violence, the exclusion of the other, and injustice, or they have been incapable of being a prophetic voice that calls men and the common responsibility for justice, equality, respect of human rights, and so on. Thus, many say it would be better to exclude religion from public life altogether, or eliminate it, as your president just said in the presentation. Western nations have developed refined theories about the need to exclude God from public life because, as they say, only in this way can true freedom be achieved. But even this theory is proved fragile. The great dictatorships of the 20th century, for example, openly atheist and anti-religious, did not show themselves as docile and open as they set out to be. I'm cutting here, but the text is long. You can distribute the text as you want. The history of humanity from its origin to the most recent days demonstrate that humanity, even without God, is not necessarily good, positive, or free. Human beings are not only good. We have to decide. In front of us is in the Bible. We have to decide for life or for death, for good or for evil. Globalization itself, in short, is a positive phenomenon. It is also problematic, however, when it does not place the human person as such at the center of its attention as a subject of rights and duties, but rather the global interests. The global economy has intensely changed the concept of work, the role of trade unions, the rights acquired in the previous century, exposing the workers to precariousness. The economic crisis of recent years have accentuated the phenomenon that places financial interest at the center to the detriment of the person. The religious community, like Catholic Church now and Pope Francis, that insists on putting the interests of the person at the center of attention and not a generic global economy well-being, is therefore accused of stopping the path of progress, of protectionism, and so on. The phenomenon of migration of peoples has created incredible opportunities in terms of intercultural dialogue, but it also had created many fears. Religion is accused of uncritically welcoming the different population, or it used instrumentally to affirm and defend cultural identity as new population advance. Moreover, in almost all migrant societies of region, there is a link between religion and state, accompanied by a profound democratic deficit. In contrast, in most host countries, the secularization of societies is evident. In the face of migratory phenomenon, therefore, there is a demand for recognition and respect, a need for knowledge of other religions in all their diversity and their links with the different political and cultural realities. Religion, in this sense, has a fundamental role, which is to preserve the historical identity of those who welcome serenely and critically. On the other hand, it has the task of making it clear that affirming an identity does not necessarily mean excluding that of others. In short, we must avoid, on one hand, the asserting of generic theoretical identities not linked to the history and culture of the peoples they welcome. On the other hand, it is necessary to welcome the other serenely and without fear. Religion must also help to reflect on the Catholic of memory, especially in the West. There is a big difference between historical memory of the host country and the memory of the migrants. They are increasingly demonstrating their desire to establish a dialogue with host societies and their desire to be recognized not only as workers and consumers, but also as human beings with their own culture, history, and tradition. In conclusion, the answer to problems of this kind is not to erase identities, but to place them critically, and serenely in dialogue with each other. A faith that dialogues does not water down, but is enriched and strengthened. The global challenges, which I superficially mentioned, need a clear reaction in the stronger resilience. Such a resilience should not be based solely on immediate response to specific problems. We cannot, for example, restore justice, have a safe and clean environment, avoid any exploitation, and respect everyone's rights only through specific laws. This is not enough. We need laws, of course. Stable changes in society, in the economic fields, as in any other context, must be based first and foremost on spiritual renewal and cultural change. The first thing, what produces economy and attitude in society is the culture and spiritual attitude, and not the opposite. And this, in turn, requires investment in education and long periods, not expect to have changes immediately. Because any cultural changes needs time, and strong and a long time, because they require new education. Now, faith and integral human development. What the faith has to do with this? Faith, what is faith? The bishop already said. I try to give my definition. Faith is the experience of God, means having an awareness of his presence, living in that relationship that sustains personal and social life. The believer rooted in life in God does not fear confrontation, does not feel threatened by differences, because in God, he already has everything and lacks nothing. It is therefore becoming increasingly necessary, especially here in the Middle East, to make a recovery of the prophetic and educational meaning of religious experience. The religious experience cannot longer be first and foremost, as it is now, a membership decided by birth or circumstances to which one adapts, but a chosen and desired experience. The faith now cannot be anymore only something that you received, but a choice that you make. It is the task of the religious leaders, in other words, to help their respective communities to refocus and reappropriate what is fundamental in every personal and community religious experience, and therefore also in their identity as believers and citizens. That also involves being able to discern and understand what is constitutive and fundamental and belongs to our faith, belongs to us, and is destined to remain always, and what, on the contrary, is the result of interpretation of a time that is not longer ours. Not all we consider belong as part of our faith is really part of our faith. It's part of a cultural way to see our faith today. And we have to discern every year, every time, what is really belonging to the faith and remains forever, and what is just a cultural and temporary experience, religious experience. The religious experience thus lived, this is very important for us in the Middle East, because we are living of traditions. What is tradition? What is faith? What part of tradition belongs to faith, and what is only connected to cultural elements, traditions, and that sometimes have become an obstacle to any kind of development. The religious experience thus lived, that is a faith that really and fully dialogues with life, not as now, division between life and faith, dialogues with life, personal and social, is not only an obstacle to development, but also becomes its driving force and solid foundations, because everything that is founded in God is intended to fully serve men. A real renewal of the economy, therefore, can never ignore even a serious and serene religious dimension, or in any case, the comparison with it. If the economy is based on cultural and spiritual renewal, the religion is an important element. Pope Francis, now I'm cutting, I cannot read everything. Pope Francis says that he's talking a lot about integral development. In other words, religion, faith, is part of the global approach to the problems. Pope Francis called this global approach to the problems integral development. And integral means complete, that includes everything. I quote a passage of one of his documents. The prospect of integral human development is good news to be announced and implemented. And these are not dreams, he says. That is the way, good news to be announced and implemented because it proposed to us to find ourselves as humanity based on the best of ourselves. Means the dream of God that we learn to take charge of our brothers and our most vulnerable brother. That applies to the individual and society, a measure that must also be embodied in our decisions and economic models. End of quotations. So what all this has to do with peace? Now I go to universal peace and fraternity for the translator. Peace is the necessary premise that underscores every initiative that places the human person at the center and integral development, as designed by Pope Francis. Others use the expression sustainable development, but is the same. Even development for its own purpose, which does not consider the need of creation and society, which does not consider the right of all, can become an idol. Without peace, in short, we cannot have a serene cultural reflection that has to open and free breath, capable of proposing and building. In Hebrew, as we all know, peace translates shalom. The root of this term, shalom, SLM, means in Hebrew, whole, complete, perfect. First, peace is synonymous of fullness and integrity. In other words, to truly have peace, it is necessary to be capable of a vision of human life and of the world that is integral and not partial. A partial approach believes that he already has clear idea about the situation and in a sense reject a critical analysis of the complexity and where the reading of events is processed through the filter of one's already assumed opinions. I already have my opinion and I know what is the truth, what is false, where right and false. And so I don't need to understand anything. For me, everything is clear. There is no room for other assessment. When there is a conflict, there is no room for nuance, and you must choose where to stay, and that's it. Another partial approach is also what it wants to face or try to understand what happens from a political perspective only, or only military, or merely economic, or just religious. Dealing with a complex problem from one perspective, excluding all the others, and without placing them in their most complete context, has led many to make mistakes, even in the more recent past. The lack of an integral vision leaves room for the rise of fundamentalism, not only religious. I'm cutting it. Peace needs the witness of precise and robust gestures on the part of all believers. Peace needs gestures, but it also needs to be announced and defended by equally exact words. We religious leaders are therefore often, I'm talking now for us religious leaders in the Middle East, a crossroads, almost called upon to choose between the necessary denunciation of violence and abuse, always perpetrated to the detriment of the weakest, and the risk of reducing religion to a political agent, or even to party or faction, forgetting its true nature and exposing it to easy and superficial exploitations. We have here in Israel religious parties. We have religious parties in all Middle East, Muslim and Jews. Our being in the world as believers cannot be confined to devotional intimacy, nor can it be limited only to the service of charity for the poorest, but is also parousia, as Pope Francis says. That is, cannot fail to express in the manner proper to which religious experience a judgment on the world and its dynamics. We are well aware that in the Middle East, politics envelops ordinary life in all its aspects. Everything becomes political, and this seriously questions all our religious institutions involved in conflicts that wear down the life of our faithful, who await from us a word of hope, consolation, but also of truth. They are expecting from us to say something about the situation. Here we impose a truly difficult discernment that has never been achieved once for all. This does not mean being silent in the face of injustice or inviting quiet living and disengagement. The preferential option for the poor and the weak, however, does not make us a political party. Taking a stand, as we often are asked to do, cannot mean becoming part of a confrontation, but must always translate into words and actions in favor of those who suffer and groan, and not in invective and condemnation against someone. It can be easy and convenient at times to join the chorus of criticism and the recriminations, and we might even get applause and consensus, but it could be a worldly temptation. We believers are also called, in short, to love and serve the polis and share the civil authority with the civil authorities the concern and action for the common good in the general interest of all, and especially of the poor, always raising our voices to defend the rights of God and men, but without entering logics of competition and divisions. The last example is the visit of Pope in Iraq. Pope in Iraq didn't solve one of the problems of Iraq. He didn't bring peace to Iraq. The situation in Iraq is exactly the same as before the visit. But the visit, the words, the speeches, the presence, the gestures brought a new spirit in the life of Iraq and marked before and after. So words and gestures are important. And this is what we are called to do. In the context we have outlined above, the responsibility of the religious leadership, especially in the Middle East, is essential. Instead of being the religious support of less than credible political regimes, religious leadership should first cooperate with the rule-based part of society in creating a new culture of legality and become a free and prophetic voice of justice, human rights, and peace. We are not doing this right now. I'm sorry. These values are not only human values, but first, they are an expression of God's desire for people. Our contribution as religious leadership to resilience and innovation during current global challenges is not to invent the wheel again, that is, to find new and modern operating strategies, but to be ourselves, that is, credible, sincere, passionate witnesses of God. Faith and politics, like or not, have always had a closer relationship between themselves in the plan of social relations. We cannot separate. We have to do politics and faith. Faith, religion have a function for the life of national communities, and politics have always had to deal with religion and its public function. Each generation, moreover, has always had to identify the criteria and forms to regulate the relationship between these two areas of the social life of each community. Our generation and future generation are faced with challenges that we can call unique, because in these times, it is not only a question of defining the relations between faith and religion, but also of rethinking politics and religion and their roles in itself, and not only concerning each other. It is not infrequently that national politics and religion today, that they are in the dock, accused of today's evil or of incapacity, accordance, and so on. So, from what has been said so far, you can deduce that only a new man can succeed in heading a new economy. If, as Christians, on one hand, we must always keep before us the word of Jesus, my kingdom is not from this world. On the other hand, there is no doubt that a heart transformed by the gospel has a very powerful influence in political, social, and economic structures. So the gospel itself is a leaven of the kingdom already in this world. The integral, moreover, it should never be forgotten that for us Christians, what is divine is authentical Christian, is also genuinely human, and vice versa. And therefore, Christianity can contribute significantly to new humanism, a new civilization of hope and love. The Congregation of Faith and the Dicastery of Human Development, 3 years ago, they produced a very interesting document on economy and faith. I quote part of it. The integral promotion of every person, of every human community, and all men is the ultimate horizon of that common good that the Church intends to realize as universal sacrament of salvation. In this integrality of good, whose last origin and fulfillment are in God, and which has fully revealed himself in Jesus Christ, the summarist of all things, consists of the ultimate purpose of every ecclesial activity. This good flourishes as an advance of that kingdom of God that the Church is called to proclaim and establish in every area of human undertaking. And it is the unique fruit of that charity, which as main way of ecclesial action is called to express itself also in social, civil, and political law. End of quotation. That also means, I'm going to the conclusion, almost half an hour, means that we have a solid common basis with all people of goodwill, regardless of their religious faith, and that we are called to repair that common home, which is the world. This universal common commitment has become very clear in this long winter of pandemic, which we all hope will be the result of a new spring and a great reset. We need a reset. We must, however, avoid any misunderstanding. The Great Reset, far from being a project of the few for us Christians, means conversion, which means returning to God and to men and women, to our brothers and sisters, especially the weakest and poorest, in the firmest defense of life in all its form. In this time of the pandemic, therefore, we realized more than ever that we could not live as monads, also from an economic point of view, as Pope Francis said, I quote, "Every aspect of social, political, economic life is fulfilled when it is at the service of a common good, that is, of the set of conditions of social life which enable both communities and individual members to achieve their perfection more fully and more quickly. Therefore, our plans and efforts must always consider the effects on the entire human family, weighing up the consequences for the present moment and the future generations. How true and current it is the COVID-19 pandemic shows, before which we realize that we are in the same boat, all fragile and disoriented, but at the same time important and necessary, all called to row together because no one saves himself, and no isolated national state can ensure the common good of its population." End of quotation. It has ensured that Pope Francis' appeal to put in place a new economic model, the result of a culture and communion based on fraternity and equity, is not unheeded. All this is possible only in the light of the new anthropology. Without an adequate vision of man, it is impossible to establish an ethic or a practice that is equal to his dignity and to a truly common good. In fact, however neutral and detached from any basic conception, any human action, even in the economic sphere, nevertheless implies an understanding of man and the world, which reveals its positivity or not through the effects and development it produces. behind the economic vision, there is a vision of men. If you want to change the economy, we have to change the vision we have of men and society. Pope Francis, especially in the two encyclicas, Laudato Si and Fratelli Tutti, not by chance, both inspired by St. Francis, wanted to criticize the technocratic paradigm, which also intends to dominate the economy, so much so that this is the just thought in the operation of profit, without any thought about adverse consequences on the human person. The economy is sometimes reduced to mere finance or market, which suffocates the real economy, but which, however, cannot guarantee the integral human development mentioned above and social inclusions. The economy thus designed becomes dehumanizing and prevents the poorest from accessing basic resources. According to this model, to open up to the world would only mean opening up to foreign interests or to freedom of unhuman capitalism. Unfortunately, we often believe in the dogma of a neoliberal faith, according to which the market alone would solve everything. If, on one hand, it is necessary that politics favors an economy that promotes diversification of production, on the other hand, it deplores financial speculation with easy profit, which continues to disasters. In reality, the fragility of the world system in the face of the pandemic has shown that not everything is resolved by market freedom, and that in addition to rehabilitating a healthy policy that is not subject to the dictators of finance, we must put human dignity back at the center. And the alternative social structures that we need must be put on that pillar. It should not be believed, therefore, that every acquisition of powers is simply progress, an increase in security, utility, well-being, and life force. On the contrary, the immense technological growth must be accompanied by the development of man as regards his responsibility, his values, and his conscience, since he is not autonomous in the absolute sense, and risks being naked and exposed to his own power that continues to grow without having the means to control it. Thus, the economy will become unjust if a person lacks a suitable, solid ethic, a culture, and spirituality that really give him a limit and contain him within a lucid self-domination. In conclusion, we can say that in a globalized and rapidly changing world, it is time not to restore it, but to start over from foundations. It is essential for this to happen to restore the space of trust. The legacy we have received brings within it an intrinsic strength, the humble and tenacious strength of a seed. And such trust does not come from human security. Trust is born only from the awareness of salvation experienced from the joy of having found a treasure. The world is evolving more and more complex, and we could say that every aspect of this complexity comes to us as a question. The Bishop Sorrentino left out a lot of questions. I am not answering his questions. I challenge you to answer all these questions. We are still in the time of questions, not of the answers. There are new questions, and we have to put the right questions. And this allows us to question our faith in a new way, to extract from the treasure of the gospel new things and all things. A dialogue with the world that has its roots in our personal and community dialogue with the Lord. There is nothing of human experience that cannot be enlightened and enhanced by the experience of faith. And that is precisely our job, and only we can do it. Then something new will happen, a new man, a new economy. that what we have regained through this process of embodying one's faith in history will no longer be ours alone, mine alone, yours alone, but will be for everyone, will be the heritage and the gift for all. So I don't answer to none of your questions. I have the same questions you have, but what the bottom line, what we have to say, that the new economy needs an integral approach to the complexity of our society. Faith and peace are part of this complexity. We, religious leaders, have the responsibility to educate and inform our people to the true experience of faith. Not to live only with we always have done this, with the tradition, with the status quo. We should be the one who are able to give the imprinting, to give the keys to help all the society, the secular society, the religious society, to have the keys to interpret, to understand the new reality, and also to approach peace from the integral approach, not only from the religious approach. The religions are not only the only element of violence, at least here in the Middle East, not only military, not only economical, not only political, and so on. And so we, religious leaders, have the role and the mission, the vocation, to help to become part of this interfaith and complex dialogue in the society, in order to arrive to put the right questions and to have some keys for the orientation for the future. So the relation between faith, economy, and peace is that we need the economy depends on faith and peace, because when peace and faith are in their position, the economy will become the consequences. If peace and faith are not in dialogue among them, the economy will prevail, and unfortunately will be the economy based on self-interests or the service of someone only, and not the integral society. Very briefly, I don't know if I answer all your demands, what you asked to me, but I'm an idiot in these things. I didn't study economy. I didn't study anything of politics. I'm just a small friar, simple friar that tried to have some thought about the situation I'm living. I try to help my people, my flock, my communities to understand how to live in these societies. Because we know that peace are not coming tomorrow, not even after tomorrow. And faith are quite often an obstacle, because faith, as I said here, is mixed with political. So how to live in these situations as Christians, as believers? So it is our responsibility as leaders to find some keys, some indications, not theoretical, not abstracts, as Valentina said, but practical, because we need to give concrete orientation to our people. And what we have to say is that, first of all, we need a new experience of faith. The new experience of faith that help you to have a new vision of your life, and this will change also to approach to the situations. This is our first indications. And I conclude saying that this will be the topic of this discussion in our church this year. This year, I've been asked to come here because this year is lost because of pandemic, to discuss in all the parishes, in all the committees, in all the councils, these questions. How, since peace is not coming, we know that it's not coming, things are not changing, how to live peacefully in this situation of violence and oppression as Christian, which kind of witness we can give. And if you call me next year, I'll give you the answer of my church. Now I can give only the first insight of what we are discussing. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your talk. We are going to share this talk with all the people attending. I'm running without words because your talk was really inspiring under several under different perspectives. So thank you so much. Well, unfortunately, we will have no time for questions from the audience, but in Mentimeter we have collected few of them. So we received more than 30 questions. We cannot give you 30 questions. I asked the people from the audience to vote for their preferred question, and we are going to share this question with you via email. So Bishop, be prepared to receive one email from us, and if you can answer one of these questions, then we can add your response, your answer to the documents we're going to share with the participants to the school. So now I leave the floor now to three discussants from the EoF communities. Those three discussants come from two villages: Business and Peace and Vocation and Profit. So the first discussant will be Bernat. So Bernat, please, you have 5 minutes to discuss the talk by the bishop. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Valentina, and thank you very much, Archbishop, for your speech. It's been really inspiring, and I've been quite moved by this true experience of faith that you told us today, because we as economists live in a world in conflict sometimes. For example, in my case, we are from the Business and Peace village. Okay, so we are quite concerned on how businesses can promote peace. So this peace in businesses or related with businesses could be understood with, well, as peace from the business to outside, right? So maybe Elena, my colleague in this in our village, talk about that, this peace outside business. But what I want to discuss with you is how we can promote this peace within businesses. Okay, because we as economists experience, as economists and Christians, we experience some difficult situations in businesses. You told that this old word shalom, no, it's something that means this plenitude, this completeness, this integral development in some sense, right? And I guess that the kingdom of heaven is something like that. It's something that we can live today in the present. Is some completeness within us that we can live in businesses. Okay, so as you said, that we should be quite practical, that we should deploy gestures, for example. Which kind of spirit gestures you see that are bad in businesses to promote this peace in the meaning of whole peace, completeness for people, and which kind of concrete and practical gestures you think that we should deploy, that we should live and practice within our businesses? Thank you.
So thank you, Bernat. I suggest to move to Elena for a brief discussion, and then we will leave 2 or 3 minutes for conclusion to Paolo and to the bishop. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Valentina, and thank you very much, Bishop. I join Bernat in congratulating you for your speech, and also like in saying that it was really inspiring and really like moving, and yeah, I think like it really shows how really everything is interconnected, and we cannot promote peace without promoting development, and we cannot promote development without promoting peace, which I think was really important. So as Bernat was saying, I would ask you a question more on how we can promote peace outside of the business. And in particularly, I would like to focus on the question of disarmament. That is a question that we really focus on in our Peace and Business Village. So we know that Pope Francis really insisted on the importance of disarmament. He first went to Japan. He then promoted the construction of a global fund where we should invest what we are now investing in weapons for the poor and for integral human development. And we also know that in his visit in Iraq, he also said that it's important to invest in food and not in weapons. But you said at the same time that faith is a fundamental dimension for economy. And we know that like what makes the market of weapons possible is also faith, but a faith we can say in deterrence and in the power of weapons to like avoid and deter from conflict, especially in the case of nuclear weapons. And so I would like to have your insight on how faith and religion could break this faith in deterrence and promote integral disarmament. If you could.
Thank you, Elena. Now, Nayeli from the Village Vocation and Profit.
Well, hello, everybody. I'm Nayeli from Mexico, and it's truly a honor to speak on behalf of my village, Vocation and Profit. Thank you, Bishop and Archbishop, for the priceless talk you have given us today. I'm sure you made a lot of us to think deeper about faith, peace, and economy. Thank you so much for your time. I love these lessons and being part of the Economy of Francesco. It has been definitely a valuable asset in our lives because it has literally changed our way of thinking and acting. Speaking specifically of my village, we are all driven by our vocations and ways of helping others because we believe that the human being is the center of everything else, as you also said. If you treat well the people that is around you, you will create harmony and fraternity. Fraternity, a value that Pope Francis talks a lot about in his last encyclical, actually, Fratelli Tutti. And it's interesting because I saw a lot this word at the beginning when the people voted about peace. So it's interesting to mention this. I believe that peace and faith come together when we talk about economy. But as Archbishop Pizzaballa said, human beings are not only good, and the instincts of the person must be the center of the attention. Actually, as Bishop Sorrentino and Archbishop Pizzaballa said at the beginning, we just saw a good example of that when Pope Francis went to Iraq this week. From his faith, he said, "You are all brothers and sisters." And sometimes we just forget something as simple as that. Then he said something amazing about peace. Where does the journey of people begin? He asked. And he said, from the decision not to have enemies. Anyone who believes in God has not enemies to fight. This is also what Bishop and Archbishop said about faith. This is the experience of God. There's no fear for confrontation because we already have everything and like nothing. I love that thing you said. And as the Patriarch of Jerusalem also said, Pope Francis didn't solve a problem there, but he gave hope to this nation. And hope means a lot even for a single person. He went to this apostolic visit transmitting his faith, talking about peace. And after that, he talked about everything else like economy. So we just lived an example that it doesn't matter if you go to a place full of wars, peace and faith will make the difference. And well, in conclusion for me, if we want to live at full, we must defend, as the Patriarch said, our faith, peace, and raise our voices. Also, don't forget to put human dignity on the center, as we just heard all over on this lesson. Thanks a lot for listening to me, and I'm giving the floor to Paola or Valentina, I believe.
Yeah, thank you, Nayeli. Thank you, Nayeli. Thank you, Elena. Thank you, Bernat, because you brought the vision of EoF and of your villages within this discussion. So just one second, just to remind you that you can vote over the question we are going to send to Archbishop Pizzaballa for a reply, and we're going to send you also, dear Archbishop, those discussions from our 3 discussants, because we really think it's worth following this conversation with you and with all the community. So this was something we didn't share with you before. It is a sort of a surprise situation in this lesson. So Paolo, now I leave the floor for you for a quick conclusion and the presentation of the next lesson.
Yes, I don't know if Archbishop Pizzaballa wants to say something about just 2 or 3 words to reply to the comments of Bernat. And yes.
Okay, very shortly, for the first question at least, business is important for peace, of course, because people at the end they want to have a salary, to have a work, to have and this requires economy and business, of course. That's very clear. And when there is a good economy, also this is the basis to have a serene atmosphere and peaceful atmosphere in the society. This is very clear. But in order, the business cannot be left alone. Business needs ethic approach. The ethic approach needs politics and faith. But of course, Paul VI said that the synonym of peace is development. So the economy and business is very important. And so we need vision, economists, businessmen, persons that are ready to invest, ready to be, I mean, also to gain money, to have a profit, of course, but with an ethical approach that has limits and goals and purpose and criteria. And economy and business cannot left alone. It needs politics, it needs ethics and faith that is basing these ethics. This what I can say. So, this is not that granted. What we see that the economy now is left alone. Politics don't decide the economy. Very little, at least at national level, and the vision is not a vision that the profit. The vision is the profit is the only criteria, and so the point is to have a different approach to business. But business is necessary, otherwise there will be no development. For the second question. Disarmament. This is connected with the profit. One of the biggest profit the economies can have is from the weapon markets. Here also I go to the previous point. If there are, the economy is regulated, there is organized by politics and with a vision, with ethics, this couldn't happen. So once again, we have to go back to we cannot solve these situations with specific laws, but we have to go back to the vision we have of society and human being. And in this case, the religious institution, religions and politics, if they are serious and honest, can dialogue in order to have a common front for this. Otherwise, it will be just theoretical and utopian dreams.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for your answer. So now I'm in charge of the conclusions, and of course, a biggest thanks to all the people, for example, to Valentina who organized, but also for her enthusiasm, you know, in moderating this session, to Bishop Sorrentino and Archbishop Pizzaballa for their wisdom, because they share wisdom today with us, but also to our 3 discussants, Bernat, Elena, and Eli, because Archbishop, I don't know if you noticed, but here at the Economy of Francesco, we have invited lecturers, but also our discussants are the main guests, you know, so we try to put young economists, you know, in front of this. And second of all, a good news is that a lot of people is asking for your speech, so we will share, of course, the handouts, but I will also stress that, I mean, we really appreciate the fact that you were being today with us, reading, but also making comments, answering discussion questions, even making cuts. I mean, it was great because it's for us is a sign of care and attention. So thanks for this. Thanks for your time. And now I conclude announcing that the next webinar, the next lesson on 24th of March, we will have Julie Nelson, Emeritus Professor of Economics at the University of Massachusetts, Boston. And you know that 2 days was International Women's Day. Now, Julie Nelson will lecture us on precisely why economics today, in her opinion, is too fixed on formulas, hard data, abstract methods, dimension which she described as, it's interesting, she described it as masculine. And why this, according to her, prevents some other dimensions, more according to her, women frame as the dimension of care, the dimension of common goods, of the commons, to find space in contemporary economics. So we will have her, it will be an amazing lecture as the one we have just attended today. So please don't miss it. See you and have nice morning, afternoon, night, depending on your time zone. Thank you for your present attention. And Archbishop, if you want to say just the last word to conclude, no, it's fine, okay. So we thank you. Bye, bye everyone.